It seems like every day, there's a new headline about something causing cancer, right? It's almost enough to make you paranoid. But what's really got researchers concerned, is this rise in cancer in younger people. And we're talking particularly gastrointestinal cancers, like colon cancer. It's becoming one of the leading causes of death for people under 50. And it's not just some random thing, It's each generation is actually facing higher risks than the one before. So in this deep dive, we're going to explore what researchers are finding out about the potential causes of this, and what you can actually take away from all this research, even while it's still in progress. So,
well, what I think is really captivating is the sheer urgency of all this research. I mean, the scientists aren't just sitting back. They're really trying to figure this out, this alarming trend. It's like a race against time. And they're looking at everything: diet, lifestyle, environmental factors, even the medications we take.
Yeah, it really feels like they're peeling back the layers of an onion, right? And one of the layers they're finding particularly interesting is the gut microbiome. Can you explain to our listener, why this community of bacteria in our intestines has become such a hot topic when it comes to cancer research?
Well, you can think of the gut microbiome as this bustling city. It's not just some random bunch of bacteria hanging out. It's like a really complex ecosystem with all these diverse citizens working together, And just like a city, when things are in balance, the microbiome thrives. And it contributes to everything from digestion to immunity. But when that balance gets disrupted, that's when trouble can brew. And more research is showing this connection between these disruptions and the development of certain cancers.
So it's not just that the microbiome is there, right? It's about the specific makeup of this bacterial community. I know the source mentions the usual suspects when it comes to gut health: obesity, sugary drinks, lack of exercise, alcohol, high-fat diets, basically all the fun stuff, right? But how do these things actually affect the microbiome, at a microscopic level?
Well, it's not really about eliminating all the fun. It's more about understanding how these things can tip the scales in the wrong direction. Like high-fat diets. They can decrease the diversity of the beneficial bacteria in the gut, and that can make it easier for the harmful bacteria to take hold. And the shift in the microbial balance, that can trigger inflammation, which is a known risk factor for several types of cancer.
So it's not just about having a happy tummy or whatever, right? It's about understanding that this hidden world inside us can have a huge impact on our overall health. But what I think is really impressive is that researchers aren't just looking at, these lifestyle factors in isolation. They're actually diving deep. I mean, they're analyzing blood, tumor, and even fecal samples. So what kind of information are they hoping to get from these, I guess you could say, less than glamorous sources?
It's about moving beyond correlation and into causation. By examining blood, they can identify biomarkers that show inflammation or immune dysregulation. And that can be linked to, changes in the microbiome. Analyzing tumor samples, well, that can reveal distinct bacterial signatures or metabolic byproducts that are associated with cancer development. And believe it or not, even those fecal samples, they can actually provide valuable insights into the composition and the activity of the gut microbiome, which helps the researchers put together this complicated puzzle of how these bacteria might be influencing cancer risk.
That's pretty incredible, right? And they're even going a step further, this part is a little wild, but they're giving mice potential cancer-causing substances that are found in humans to see if they develop tumors. Talk about dedicated researchers. So why is this step so important?
Well, it's all about recreating the human experience, but in a controlled environment. By exposing the mice to specific substances, researchers can observe how those substances actually interact with the gut microbiome and whether those interactions lead to the development of tumors. And this level of detailed analysis allows them to isolate specific culprits and potentially even develop targeted prevention strategies.
And speaking of culprits, the source points to ultra-processed foods as, a major area of concern. Those culinary concoctions that are everywhere in the grocery store. So what is it about these foods that makes them so potentially harmful to our gut? And how does that connect to cancer risk?
Well, ultra-processed foods are like a symphony of disruption for the gut. First of all, they're often packed with additives, artificial sweeteners, and emulsifiers. And all of those things can negatively impact the balance of bacteria in our gut. Second, they tend to be low in fiber, which basically starves the beneficial bacteria that thrive on those complex carbohydrates. And finally, some of the compounds that are formed During the ultra-processing itself, well, they might actually have harmful effects on gut health, which could potentially promote inflammation and disrupt the delicate balance of the microbiome.
And this isn't just, like, theoretical, right? The source talks about stories of young people, seemingly healthy, who are suddenly diagnosed with advanced colon cancer. It's like a stark reminder that this research isn't just happening in a lab. It has very real and heartbreaking consequences.
Absolutely. It really underscores how urgent this research is and the importance of understanding the factors that are contributing to this, alarming trend. We can't just wait until we have all the answers. We need to explore every possible avenue and empower people with knowledge so they can make good choices about their health.
It's like we've been looking at the gut as just like a digestive organ for way too long, and now we're realizing it's much more complex and influential than we ever imagined. But beyond diet and lifestyle, the source mentions that researchers are digging even deeper, looking at other potential disruptors of the gut microbiome that might be linked to cancer.
Yeah, that's where things get even more fascinating, is that we pulled on this thread, and it's unraveling a whole tapestry of systems that are all interconnected. And two areas that have emerged as particularly interesting, maybe a little surprising at first, are antibiotics and light pollution. I mean, who would have thought? Those two things could be connected to gut health, let alone cancer.
All right, let's dive into those, because those are things, that our listeners are dealing with every day. First up, antibiotics. I mean, we all know they can, mess with your gut in the short term, right? But are we talking about long-term consequences here?
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? I mean, antibiotics are essential for treating those bacterial infections, and they've saved countless lives. But they're not very discerning. They can wipe out the good bacteria right alongside the bad ones. And that can lead to disruptions in the gut microbiome that sometimes persist long after you finish taking the antibiotics. And emerging research suggests that these disruptions, particularly in early childhood, well, they might actually increase the risk of certain cancers later in life.
It's not about, demonizing antibiotics or anything, but it's about understanding that they can have a big impact on this delicate ecosystem inside us. And that impact might have far-reaching consequences, right?
Exactly. It's about weighing the benefits and the risks and using antibiotics, only when they're truly necessary. And for our listener, it might be worth talking to your doctor about the potential impact of antibiotics on your gut health, especially if you have a history of, frequent antibiotic use, or you've had to take them for a long time.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's talk about something that probably affects all of us. Light pollution. I know it can mess with your sleep, but I'm having trouble understanding how it could possibly be linked to cancer. Can you shed some light on that?
Well, it all comes down to our circadian rhythm. Our bodies have this incredible internal clock that regulates, all sorts of functions, our sleep-wake cycles, hormone production, even immune responses. And this clock is really sensitive to light exposure. So when we're exposed to, bright light, especially at night, it disrupts this delicate rhythm.
Okay, I get that. But how does that translate to gut health and cancer?
Well, research suggests that disrupting the circadian rhythm can have all these cascading effects throughout the body, including the gut. It can change the composition and activity of the gut microbiome, increase inflammation, and even suppress the immune system. And all of these factors, as we've discussed, can potentially contribute to the development of cancer.
So are you saying that staying up late, scrolling through social media, under the covers with my phone, could actually increase my risk of cancer?
Well, it's not quite that simple, but there's growing evidence that chronic circadian disruption can have a real impact on our health, including our gut health and potentially our cancer risk. It's another piece of the puzzle, and it shows how important it is to prioritize, good sleep hygiene and minimize our exposure to bright light, especially in the evening.
It's funny how something as simple as darkness can be so beneficial, right? But our brains are wired to respond to light. So it makes sense that we need to be aware of, our exposure to it, especially when it comes to sleep.
Right? It's about retraining our bodies to respect those natural rhythms. I mean, our ancestors didn't have artificial light, so their bodies were naturally in sync. With the cycles of day and night, we've kind of messed with those cycles with our modern lifestyles. But we can get them back, by making conscious choices.
We've talked about what we eat, how much we move, how well we sleep, even the light we're exposed to. Are there any other aspects of modern life that we should be thinking about when it comes to gut health and cancer prevention?
Well, one thing that I think often gets overlooked is stress. Chronic stress can really mess with the gut microbiome, disrupting the balance of bacteria. increasing inflammation. So finding ways to manage stress, whether it's, mindfulness practices or exercise, spending time in nature, or whatever works for you. Well, that's another important piece of the puzzle.
That's a really good point. We tend to think of stress as like, a mental or emotional thing, but it obviously has a physiological impact too. And the gut, with its, connection to the nervous system, seems to be especially vulnerable to those stress signals.
Yeah, it's like a two-way street. Stress can impact the gut, and disruptions in the gut can impact, our mood, our cognitive function, even our behavior.
Yes.
It's a good reminder that our bodies are these complex, interconnected systems, and we need to approach our health from a holistic perspective.
We also talked about the potential long-term consequences of using antibiotics. So should we be completely avoiding them?
No, not at all. Antibiotics are life-saving medications.
Yeah.
And they definitely have their place in modern medicine. But it's about using them judiciously, only when they're truly necessary. I would say, talk to your doctor about the potential impact of antibiotics on your gut health.
Yeah.
Maybe see if there are alternative treatment options available. And if you do have to take antibiotics, you might want to think about incorporating, probiotic-rich foods or supplements into your diet to help replenish the good bacteria in your gut.
So it's about being an informed patient and having an open conversation with your doctor. We're not doctors, obviously, but we're encouraging our listener to, advocate for their own health and ask questions. This has been such a great discussion. We started off feeling kind of overwhelmed by all the doom and gloom of cancer statistics, but now I'm feeling empowered with knowledge and actionable steps,
Yeah, it's about shifting the narrative from fear to empowerment. We can't control everything, but we can control our choices. And those choices can have a huge impact on our health.
And speaking of choices, the source makes it clear that there's no magic bullet solution. There's not one food or supplement or lifestyle change that will, guarantee you won't get cancer. It's about understanding how all these different factors work together and making good decisions that support, our overall well-being.
Right, it's a journey, not a destination. And as research continues, we're going to gain even more insights into this complex world of the gut microbiome and how it affects our health.
So let's leave our listener with a final thought-provoking question, something to think about as they continue their own journey of exploration. All right, so we've talked about the gut microbiome and those usual suspects, like diet and lifestyle, and even some less obvious factors like light pollution and those forever chemicals. It's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed by all this information. So let's shift gears a little and talk about what we can actually do. Even while the research is still ongoing, are there things we can start doing right now to support our gut health?
Absolutely, and that's the beauty of this research. It empowers us. Understanding what can disrupt the gut microbiome gives us the knowledge to make, smarter choices and take those proactive steps to protect our health.
Okay, so where do we even begin? The source mentions cutting back on ultra-processed foods and alcohol. Those seem like, good starting points, but is it really as simple as swapping out chips for carrots?
Well, it's not necessarily about, striving for perfection or completely eliminating certain foods. It's more about making those, gradual shifts towards a more gut-friendly diet. So by reducing ultra-processed foods, we limit our exposure to those, those additives and artificial sweeteners and the unhealthy fats that can negatively impact the gut microbiome. And as for alcohol, well, it's not just about gut health. The Surgeon General recently recommended that even, moderate alcohol consumption can increase the risk of several types of cancer, including colorectal cancer. So cutting back or even eliminating alcohol is a really powerful step towards improving your overall health.
Right, so it's about it's about reducing the things that disrupt the gut.
Okay.
And replacing them with things that nourish it. So I'm guessing loading up on fruits, vegetables, and fiber is next on the list?
You got it. A diet rich in fiber is it's like a feast for the beneficial bacteria in our gut. And fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, wow, those are excellent sources of fiber. And they also provide a whole range of, vitamins and minerals and antioxidants that contribute to our overall health. Think of it this way. You're not just feeding yourself, you're fueling trillions of tiny allies who are working hard to keep you healthy.
I love that. So it's about making sure that those gut bacteria have a diverse and delicious buffet to enjoy, right? What about exercise? We know it's good for pretty much everything, but how does it specifically benefit the gut? Is a leisurely stroll enough, or do we need to be hitting the gym?
Well, exercise isn't just about burning calories or, building muscle. It can actually help shape the gut microbiome. Research suggests that even moderate exercise can increase the diversity of gut bacteria, and it can promote the growth of beneficial species, and even improve how efficiently we absorb nutrients.
So you're telling me my daily walk with my dog is actually doing double duty, helping me stay fit and fostering a thriving gut microbiome. I'll have to give my pup an extra treat tonight. But seriously, it sounds like we don't need to, become marathon runners to reap the benefits.
Exactly. Every little bit counts. Aim for at least 30 minutes of, moderate intensity exercise most days of the week. And it doesn't have to be, super strenuous, a brisk walk, a bike ride, a dance class. Even gardening, anything that gets you moving and your heart pumping can make a difference.
Okay, so we've talked about what we put into our bodies and how we move them. Now let's talk about rest. We discussed how light pollution can disrupt our circadian rhythm. But realistically, in our modern world, can we really escape this constant bombardment of light, especially from our devices?
Yeah, you're right. It's a challenge for sure. But there are things we can do to minimize our exposure, especially in the evening. Think of it as like creating a sanctuary of darkness for your body to recharge. You can start by dimming the lights in your home a few hours before bed. Use blackout curtains in your bedroom to block out, street lights and other external light sources. And most importantly, I think, create a digital curfew. Turn off your phone, your computer, your TV, at least an hour before bed.
It's interesting how something as simple as darkness can be so beneficial, right? But our brains are hardwired to respond to light. So it makes sense that we need to be, mindful of how much we're exposed to, especially when it comes to sleep.
It's about, like I said, retraining our bodies to respect those natural rhythms. Our ancestors didn't have artificial light, so their bodies were just naturally in sync with the cycles of day and night, and we've disrupted those cycles with our modern lifestyles. But we can reclaim them by making those conscious choices.
Okay, so we've talked about diet, exercise, sleep, and light exposure. Are any other aspects of modern life that we should be thinking about when it comes to, gut health and cancer prevention?
Well, one thing that I think often gets overlooked is the impact of stress. Chronic stress can really wreak havoc on the gut microbiome. It disrupts the balance of bacteria and increases inflammation. So finding ways to manage stress, whether it's, mindfulness practices or exercise, spending time in nature, or whatever works for you. Well, that's another really important piece of the puzzle.
That's a really important point, actually, because we tend to think of stress as a mental or emotional issue, but it clearly has a physiological impact as well, right? And the gut, with its, intricate connection to the nervous system, seems to be particularly vulnerable to those stress signals.
It is, yeah. It's like a two-way street. Stress can impact the gut, and disruptions in the gut can impact, our mood, our cognitive function, even our behavior. It's a good reminder that, our bodies are these complex, interconnected systems, and we need to approach our health from a holistic perspective.
We also talked about the potential long-term consequences of antibiotic use. So should we be completely avoiding antibiotics?
No, not at all. Antibiotics are life-saving medications, and they definitely have their place in modern medicine. But it's about using them judiciously, I guess you could say. Only when they're really necessary. I would say, talk to your doctor about the potential impact of antibiotics on your gut health.
Yeah.
And see if there are alternative treatment options available. And if you do need to take antibiotics, you might want to think about incorporating probiotic-rich foods or supplements into your diet to help, replenish the beneficial bacteria in your gut.
So it's about being an informed patient, right? And having that, that open dialogue with your healthcare provider. Obviously, we're not doctors, but we're encouraging our listener to, advocate for their own health and ask questions. This has been such a valuable discussion. We started off feeling kind of overwhelmed by all the doom and gloom of those cancer statistics, but now I feel much more empowered with knowledge and actionable steps we can take.
Right. It's about shifting that narrative from fear to empowerment. We can't control everything, of course.
Yeah.
But we can control our choices. And those choices can have a really profound impact on our health.
And speaking of choices, the source makes it clear that there's no single magic bullet solution, right? There's no one food or supplement or, lifestyle change that's going to guarantee that you won't get cancer. It's about understanding how all these different factors play together and making informed decisions that support, our overall well-being.
It's a journey, not a destination. And as research continues, we're going to gain even more insights, into this complex world of the gut microbiome and how it impacts our health.
So let's leave our listener with a final thought-provoking question, something to, ponder as they continue on their own journey of exploration. So we've been really focusing on the gut microbiome's role in, cancer development, but it feels like we've only scratched the surface here. If the gut is really this central to our health, what other areas could be affected by this, this microscopic world inside us?
Well, that's the question that's driving so much of the research right now, is we've opened this Pandora's box of, gut bacteria.
Yeah.
And realize they might be involved in all sorts of things. We've been talking about cancer, but scientists are exploring links to a whole range of conditions, from mental health and mood disorders to autoimmune diseases, and even cardiovascular health.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So you're saying that taking care of our gut could have ripple effects throughout our whole body?
Yeah, that's the picture that's emerging. We're moving away from this, compartmentalized view of the body to a more holistic understanding of how everything is really connected. What happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut. It can affect our brains, our hearts, our immune systems, and so much more.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We started with this, alarming rise of cancer in young people. Then we delved into this fascinating world of the gut microbiome, and now we're seeing just how far-reaching its impact could be. It's kind of humbling, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a reminder that we still have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
About the human body.
Yeah.
But the discoveries being made are, truly transformative. They're changing how we think about health and disease, and even, who we are.
It's good to know that we can do things to support our gut health, even while the research is still going on, simple things. Eating a fiber-rich diet, exercising regularly, getting enough sleep, managing stress, being mindful of, antibiotic use. All of that can make a real difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we learn more, I'm sure we'll find even more ways to nurture this vital ecosystem inside us. But beyond those specific actions, I think the biggest takeaway from this deep dive is the importance of, curiosity and critical thinking.
Yeah, for sure. We need to stay informed about the research, question assumptions, and be open to new ideas. The gut microbiome is a field that's constantly evolving. And what we know today might be,
It's a tidbit for the iceberg. Yeah. Exactly. So to our listener, I encourage you to keep exploring, dive deeper into this fascinating world of the gut microbiome. What new discoveries are waiting for us? What other connections are there to be made? The journey of understanding our own bodies. Well, it's an ongoing adventure.
Yeah.
And it's full of, wonder and complexity.
Yeah.
And the potential for some incredible breakthroughs.
Well said. This deep dive has been a really fantastic journey. And as always, we want to thank our listener for joining us. We'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive into the world of knowledge.
谢谢收看。健康生活，关心您的生活健康。请订阅、点赞及转传。